Thank you for joining us today on Your Elevated Space, where we talk all about how to transform our spaces to improve our lives in the areas of money, relationships, and overall well-being. Over the course of 21 days, my guests and I are here to show you how you can gain happiness and clarity through intentional art and design. And today I am so excited to introduce you all to Susan Chu, who is a crystal expert, an energetic healer, and a feng shui coach. And today we're going to talk all about how you can use crystals incorporated for good feng shui. Susan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited to share tips on how to use crystals in your everyday life.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, how did you have a business degree, so how did you get involved with crystals to begin with?
So I have always been interested in the feng shui aspect first. I was into feng shui from a very early age, before I even knew what it was. Like I knew intuitively as a kid that things just didn't feel right when they're not in a certain place, or that the rooms or the furniture needs to be moved every once in a while because you just kind of feel heavy and stuck in that space. So I learned about feng shui first, and then when after I graduated from college, started getting a job, I started learning about feng shui from other teachers beside my parents. And then as I was into that, I started learning more about energy and how it impacts us on a daily basis. I stumbled upon crystals accidentally. Okay, so I've always been interested in crystals. I buy them, I place them in the home, similar to placing paintings in your home or any other decorations. You just kind of place it here and there because it makes you feel good. But I didn't really understand why it felt good, but it just did. So I started taking crystal classes with this particular teacher, and it just literally opened up a whole new doorway for me. It was like, I felt an instantaneous connection to crystals. And one of the things that we had to do as an exercise was to learn how to communicate with the crystals, how to talk with them, how to gather information directly from the crystals, and not via what you read in a book or what someone else tell you about, or what you read on the internet. So this is per connection between, like an open connection between you and the crystals itself. So that kind of blew my mind. And I wanted to use crystals originally from a spiritual perspective. I was very into, like, attaining enlightenment, or attaining awareness, like the more spiritual aspect of using crystals. And it wasn't until I got really, really sick that I ended up using crystals from a physical health perspective. This was right after Hurricane Sandy, and my body couldn't generate any energy. I mean, I was in bed for 5 days straight, and I barely woke up, I barely ate. If I eventually did go to see my doctor, who told me I had the flu, didn't believe him, went to see a acupuncturist, an Eastern doctor, and I kind of slowly brought myself back with crystals and acupuncture. And the combination of the two completely changed my life, to the point that when I decided to leave finance, because I was in finance, and transition into a new career, crystals and feng shui were the obvious choice. So that's what I did.
That's great. So you began your practice with feng shui, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So can you tell us about how crystals kind of tie into that and how they support each other?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, both crystals and feng shui is about energy. It's about moving energy in your space, or even moving energy in your body. So if you feel like you're kind of stuck, like you're not getting anywhere, you're not moving up in your career, you're just not going any places, that can translate into your home as well. So if you feel like you're just like on a standstill, the best thing to do is to take a look around in your home. Like, what are you holding on to that is no longer a part of you? Like a lot of us hold on to stuff from past relationships, or stuff that we carry from one home to the next, but we leave them in boxes and they're just kind of hidden away. So that's our energy. Everything carries energy. Physical stuff like, a table, antiques that we had inherited from our grandparents, and even like, emails are actually energy as well. Like I mean, like a few years ago, I noticed on someone's phone, they had like 500 unread emails. I mean, that like in itself is energy. So it's very important to kind of like be aware of how energy shows up in your life or in your home. So crystals help move that. Like, there are certain crystals that are more very fiery. So if you are holding on to like a carnelian, for example, or if you place a carnelian in your home, it's going to like, give you a burst of energy. It's going to revitalize your the occupants in the home and makes like, potentially the occupants more action oriented. And so it kind of pushes them to do something, to make a change, wherever it is.
I love that. So there's different types of crystals, and they each will do, a different thing for you in terms of your health or your overall feeling, really.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned that you were fairly ill and you started to use crystals to improve your health. Can you explain kind of how that played out?
Okay, so I was, as mentioned, my body couldn't generate enough energy for me to use on any given day. So in Chinese medicine, there's something about as it pertains to energy, there's something like a checking and saving account. So checking account is like basically like the food you eat, the exercises, so the how your body creates energy. The saving account is what you receive when you were born from your parents. So hopefully for a majority of people, hopefully you never have to tap into a savings account. You only use the checking account's energy that you naturally create, or your body naturally create. For me, I actually tap into my savings account energy, and it was depleting to a point where my body could not create enough energy for me to go through a day. So I had to use crystals to supplement that. So I use a lot of energizing crystals, a lot of crystals that give you a bunch of energy, like tiger iron, carnelian, quesara. So a bunch of stones that I literally put into my pants pockets or wear as bracelets and anklets, or some people actually place it into the bra. And I do know a bunch of people who actually do that, as well as place crystals in your home to support that. And so over time, wearing those crystals, having crystals in my home, I was eventually able to recover, and my body was able to generate enough energy. I also used stones that were more for not necessarily purely energy, but more for healing purposes as well, because it kind of goes in conjunction, right? You want to heal your body as well as give us energy. So that's what I did. So it really helped me on different levels.
That's great. So in the past, I've heard that, you don't necessarily want to look up the benefit of each crystal ahead of time. You want to more so kind of step back and experience what the crystal will do for you. Can you speak a little bit more on why that is, or, how that works? And
So
what,
there's two school of thoughts on that. One is that, instead of looking up what a crystal does, is for you to intuitively feel out what crystal or crystals you resonate with. So if you walk into a crystal store, rather than read the labels or even what the names are, don't look at that. Look at the stones itself and say, does this resonate with me? Like, if you're resonating with a particular stone, more likely than not, there's a reason behind that. It may not be obvious. It may not be obvious to your conscious mind, I should say, but there is an underlying reason why you are being drawn to that particular stone. Now, from a physical health perspective, while that is true for the most part, there are certain stones that are really good for specific health challenges as well. So sometimes if you have a specific issue that you're dealing with, that you are consciously dealing with, that it may be beneficial just to I guess look around or even ask what crystals are good for this, because even like for to energize a body, right? There's could be like 20 different stones that could be used for the same purpose, and one of those stones is going to resonate with you, sort of thing. So it's sometimes good to ask, like, what stone, rather than walking into a crystal store and like there's 200 different crystals. Like, where do you start?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so going back to the home, there's certain areas of your home that you would want to place your crystals as opposed to others. You want to keep them out in an open space, I assume, or are there
Yes.
certain parts? Do you use the Bagua mat, by the way?
I do, but you don't have to. So if you are a feng shui consultant, or if you practice feng shui, or if you even like doing it for yourself, you can correlate the crystals to the feng shui Bagua map. But if you don't do anything with feng shui, you can also use crystals on a room by room basis. So for example, for a bedroom, you may not necessarily want to have too fiery of a stone in it, just because you want to be able to sleep peacefully in in the room. But if you want to maybe put in, maybe increase or enhance the passionate energy between you and your partner in the room, then you may choose stones that are more about like, explorations or, heat rather than peace. So it depends on what the purpose is or why you're choosing crystals to be placed in the specific rooms.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So I've actually had experience with crystals myself, and I was using it for healing. I was doing a lot of energy healing, sound healing, raising your vibration, all of that. It was really a fascinating experience, and I definitely had a physical reaction to it, so I know that it was working. And after my sessions, she gave me crystals to take home. They were small, so I don't know if, is there a difference, by the way, between, the size of them? Like, is it more impactful to get a larger stone, or does that not matter?
Well, it depends. So if you're using crystals for yourself on a personal level, then the smaller stone is fine. But if you're trying to make maybe your living room more enjoyable for everybody in the house, more, peaceful, more harmonious, then you want a bigger size crystal. But if it's just for you, then a smaller one is suffice.
Okay. Yeah, it was really an interesting experience, because through that, if after the session I would feel a lot of anxiety, she would just coach me to just look at the pile of crystals. I had about 5 or 6 different ones, and just let them speak to me, so that I could just select whichever one that my body needed at the time. And then just holding it to my person, it was amazing how it would just completely dissipate that anxiety.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a difference between high quality versus not so quality crystals, right?
Yes. So this gets a little bit tricky, because a lot of us we don't actually buy a crystals directly from the mine. Like, so we don't really know how it's being mined by the mining company. So like, if they're using like an axe to pick, like, manually digging it out, or if they're using explosive. Right. So obviously, if it's using explosive, the crystals in the process will feel that charge, and they may not be as powerful as a stone that's kind of like, painstakingly like removed from the rock that is in, sort of thing. So that makes a difference. It also depends on, I think, something that not a lot of people may actually think about is the energy where it is mined from. So if it's in the middle of a like a hilly area, very rural. There's a lot of nature, there's a lot of trees, and then it was mined there. It's going to absorb that energy, versus if it was mined in a location where there's a lot of civic war or something like that, or there's a lot of killing, and then the crystal is going to absorb that type of energy as well. So there's a lot of different aspect that impacts the quality of the stone. Now, at the end of the day, I think most of us buy our crystals in a shop or via Etsy or like via a smaller shop sort of thing. And so it's very important for the people who are actually selling the crystals to be very mindful of cleansing the energy of the crystal, charging it up, making sure that when it is shipped out to a final client, hopefully a final client, that is as powerful as it can be, as possible.
Absolutely. So where do you obtain your crystals from? I'm just curious.
So I try to find sellers who buy their crystals from the source. That's not always the case. I mean, it's just not, it's very limited. But when I do find sellers who buy from the source, then I tend to buy from them, because I know they also are very aware of the energy aspect of it. They're very aware that crystals hold energy. And so those are the sellers I tend to gravitate toward.
Okay, that's good. So we're using crystals for increasing our spirituality, improving our health, healing. What are some of the things, I mean, we've been spending so much time at home lately due to this, health situation that we're in. And, are there certain things that we should be mindful of that maybe we would need that extra support right now?
There are two types of crystals that I will recommend for everybody. Okay. One is the more of these, the type of stones that help us relax or de-stress. I think a lot of people are carrying a lot of anxiety. Everybody's fearful, they're anxious about what's going to happen. So they're holding it in because now our kids are actually at home as well. Our partner, everybody's at home. And so we can't necessarily show or display our anxiety to the family because we don't want them to be anxious. So we're holding a lot in a body. So there are certain stones such as lepidolite, angelite, amethyst that are super helpful in terms of helping you kind of let it go, let everything go. So you can hold onto those stones, place them in your bedroom, or you can actually place them underneath your pillow, however you prefer to use crystals. Now, the second type of crystals that I actually would recommend is grounding stones. So because we are so over anxious, a lot of people have what I call monkey mind. We're thinking about so much up here. We have so many to-do lists or so many things we need to tackle, so many things we have to remember to do, etc. That is just too active. And that, I think, is a part of the problem of being anxious all the time as well. So we need to bring all this energy up here down to our feet. So a lot of the grounding stones that you can use can be used to kind of pull the energy downward. So some examples are smoky quartz, hematite, pyrite. So those are just a few of the examples, but there are literally dozens and dozens of different grounding stones that can actually help you pull the energy down.
I love that. So, I'm sure someone is listening. There's probably only one person that's skeptical of this who's listening right now, we'll assume. And so, what do you have to say to those people that, either have never really even heard of this or begun to explore it? And does it just seem a little woo-woo? What do you have to say?
Okay, so this is quite interesting because the one crystal that I find that everybody has have a instantaneous or almost instantaneous reaction to is selenite. So I have given or sold a selenite to a roofer who was climbing up and down the ladder all the time, and his knees were giving him problems. A construction worker who was using like a jackhammer, and so his body was just like was in pain. And like, you know, just different people, particularly guys, because guys tend to be the one who are like, I don't think so. But after using selenite and experiencing no pain, they were instantaneously believer. So I think for people who are very dubious that crystals actually can help, I do recommend maybe buying a selenite, buying one crystal, just one, buying a selenite crystal, a good size, not like a little tiny, like, you know, $2 piece sort of thing. So buying a selenite plate or whatever, and using that for your pain or using that for your insomnia, and see what your reaction is.
Can you show us with your hands how large of a crystal you would recommend?
I would suggest like one of those selenite plate. It's like maybe like around 4 or 5 inches in diameter.
Okay.
I think that is a good size to use. So you could actually place it underneath your pillow if you are having any trouble sleeping or falling asleep or staying asleep. Alternatively, if you are experiencing any type of pain, we'll just say you have foot pain. So while you're watching TV, right? You're watching TV like, you know, a few hours a day, or even if you're sitting at your desk in the office or even in your home right now, just placing your feet on your selenite plate, just leaving it there. It's not really totally inconvenient, right? You're just like, you know, sitting at your desk typing, talking on the phone, etc. And so just having it there, you're going to notice a huge difference after a while.
I love that. So it's more about really having it attached to your own physical being as opposed to putting it on a shelf or something like that. Or it's obviously nice to display it while you're not using it, right?
Yes. So if you're using like an amethyst, would you say, which is very good to help people relax. For some people, relax. Displaying it in a living room can help everybody in the living room. I mean, it will just help as soon as someone walk in, they may feel much more peaceful or at ease. With certain crystals, if you're using it for a specific purpose, such as pain, especially for physical health challenges, I do recommend holding onto your crystals or wearing it as a bracelet or putting it somewhere in one of the pockets on you, so that it has more of a direct contact to your body.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, I think you had mentioned before, maybe not in this conversation, but there's 3 levels where you kind of, once you're at physical pain, then it's like the alarms are going off. Like there's a couple levels before that, right? That maybe we ignore.
Yeah, so that's the emotional and mental piece.
Mm-hmm.
So before a health challenge actually get to the physical level, we would have experienced it via our emotions or the way we think. So I'll use an example. I don't think she minds. I met this lady a while back, and she was having a lot of problems in her marriage. And so I had recommended some recommendation from a functional perspective, just like really, really general, like nothing specific, just for promoting a better relationship. She did not want to hear it. She didn't like, it wasn't that she didn't believe in feng shui. She just didn't want to hear it, right? So as soon as she said that, as soon as she told me that, because she's having, she's going through a lot of emotional stuff. She's having a lot of mental challenges about, like, she should stay in this relationship. Should she go? Like a lot of thoughts, put it that way. But as soon as she told me her response, I immediately, what dropped in was like, she's going to get cancer. And like, I don't know where that came from. It just snapped. It was like, it just dropped in. And I didn't think about it until 2-3 years later. I forgot how many years later. And I learned she had cancer, breast cancer. And it was like, it made sense because what she was refusing to acknowledge or work on was the heart, her relationship, which is very correlated to your heart. So she refused to tackle it from an emotional and mental perspective. And so the last result, or the last red flag, I guess you could say, that the body can notify that something is wrong, is to literally create a physical health challenge that she could not ignore. And she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She went through chemo. Now she's completely fine. She doesn't have cancer anymore. Okay. But a lot of our physical health challenges stems from emotional and mental first. And when we refuse over and over again to tackle it, to find a solution, then it's going to manifest into a physical health challenge.
Gosh, I'm so glad she's doing better now. Did she work with you eventually, in the crystal space, or she kind of just went ahead and did her own thing?
I don't think she eventually even went down the spiritual path. I think she is so fixated on what she feel is what she wants and what she doesn't, what she believes in and what she doesn't believe in, sort of thing. I mean, I think she was open, like she did believe in the feng shui and how it helps people, but she's the type of person who doesn't want to go down that path. So
I think, I can say for myself anyway that, I definitely believe in a lot of this, and, I consider myself a spiritual person, but I definitely know that I'm a resistant person too. Like, you can often still have that side of you where there's some kind of blockage there and you just can't break through. But, it's always a work in progress. I definitely encourage other people to keep focused on that, because you definitely don't want to be, tied down with physical ailments and challenges. It's not a good place to be. So from a design perspective, I would definitely recommend, when you're not using your crystals, to incorporate them in shelf styling and in your decor. It's a great, beautiful found object. That's what we would call it. So, we can use crystals to make ourselves happier and, feel more grounded, like you said, absorb the negative energy, de-stress. And we can also use them to protect us, right?
Yes. So there is kind of a two school of thoughts on protection. Okay. So protection is using stones to kind of deflect or remove any negative, or what is perceived as negative energy that you picked up from someone, something, or even a specific location. Okay. And so there are crystals to kind of help deflect that. The best stone to deflect is actually labradorite. The best stone to absorb. So even if you use labradorite, but you walk into a room that is like just really, really negative, some of it is still going to flow through. It's not going to deflect 100% of it. So a lot of people use labradorite and black tourmaline in conjunction. So labradorite deflect as much as possible. Black tourmaline absorb. So if you're wearing a black tourmaline bracelet, it's going to help absorb some of the negative energy that you still picked up, and then kind of store it into the bracelet. Now, black tourmaline is one of those stones that you have to cleanse repeatedly, especially if you're using it for that purpose, right? So you want to place that outside in the sun to cleanse as long as possible. Now, there is a different or a second school of thought that don't really believe in protection, okay? So the second school of thought is that we should be able to raise our vibration. So negative energy comes at us, we take it on and transmute it, and then send the energy back out in a much higher vibration. So instead of trying to avoid everybody, or not talk to certain people because they are just making us feel badly about whatever, is that we do take it on and we act as a conduit to transform it, so that when we send it out back to people, hopefully everybody around us is, they're feeling lighter because we're helping them transform the energy indirectly. And so that is something that I teach individuals to do. I do believe in protection still, because not everybody is at that point where they can transmute energy for other people. So it's still important to protect. But then as you raise your vibration, as you work with crystals more and more, or even any spiritual modalities, then you start transmuting the energy that you're picking up. And that it's one way of helping the world elevate its vibration.
Love that. Love that. So how would you say the word healer applies to you and your work?
I don't really consider myself a healer as much. I consider the tools that I use as the healer. They're the one who's actually helping the individuals. I'm just the messenger in between. I'm just providing the information that I'm getting from the crystals, that they are good for this, for that, whatever it is, and then communicating that to an audience, to the client. So I don't really necessarily consider myself a healer.
Okay. So you work one-on-one with clients, and then you get some sort of informational download. I think it sounded like that had happened with you.
Yeah, so a lot of time what happens is I have a Facebook group. So I meet a lot of people in that group, or even in person, like whenever I'm doing a workshop or something. I get to know the person a little bit. They tell me what's going on in their life, either via text, phone call, however. And so they share information about what's going on in their life. And based upon that information, and based upon the energy that I'm reading or getting about the person, as I'm kind of like scanning the energy, the crystals will come to me. Like the crystals will be on the other side. I'm good for this. I'm good. I can help this person with this. So it's almost like I'm the conduit, and like I have two, I guess, phones on other side of me, and they're telling me information.
So when you're having a conversation with anyone on the street or on a Zoom interview, you don't have to tell, are you getting these downloads, or do you kind of put that aside for a while and until you focus on it specifically?
Not always. Sometimes. A lot of times what happens is because I don't necessarily get the download then, just because I'm trying to focus on what the person's saying. Because if I start downloading as the person's talking to me, I miss half of the things that they're telling me. So I try to not do downloads as I'm having a conversation with someone. It's very similar to feng shui. Like as soon as people ask me, as soon as people learn that I'm a feng shui consultant, they ask, so how does my room feel? How does this feel? I'm just like, when I walk in, I don't necessarily automatically pick everything up on a conscious level. I may pick it up on a subconscious level, but then that's something that will kind of bubble up down like later on that day or the next day, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. I feel the same way as an interior designer, to be honest. So I don't necessarily, if I go in for a consultation, I'm more or less taking it in, as an experience, as a feeling, aesthetically, obviously, but a lot of the information comes to me down the line. I can definitely relate to that, but it's good. So I definitely want to hear, I know you've shared a bit of success stories before, but do you have like a really exciting or fun story that you want to share of a client that you worked with that you completely got them out of pain or changed their life in another way?
Well, so one individual, she suffered from migraines, like really, really intense migraines. So she had asked me what stones. I think she was asking me what stone is good for headaches. She didn't mention the migraine aspect of it. She just said headaches. So I recommend that she sleep on a selenite. Okay, and then so I sent it to her. She purchased it. I sent it to her. 2 weeks later, I was like, so how are you feeling? Like, are you feeling any better? I didn't hear from her, and she told me why she didn't respond right away was that she wanted to make sure. She was kind of testing to like, if she sleep with sunlight, what happened? If she doesn't sleep with sunlight, what happens, sort of thing. And I think like 2 months later, she told me that her migraine is gone. She hasn't gotten a migraine since. So she just sleep on top of it. And I have heard from a number of different clients who have said the same thing. So I think that's why sunlight is one of those very powerful stones that I think a lot of people will get a instantaneous, or not necessarily like an instantaneous, but a huge reaction, a benefit from it after using it for a period of time.
Wow. Now, is that something that works primarily on migraines, or have you seen that stone affect other types of ailments too?
Well, it's good for migraine. It's good for any type of pains. So sunlight for the most part does not absorb energy. What it does, it just sends out energy. So it's one of those stones that you don't necessarily need to cleanse because it doesn't absorb it. So which is a good benefit of it, but it kind of helps lift the energy of any room, not necessarily from a fiery perspective, but more like, vibrational level. It just kind of lifts the energy up. So it kind of cleanses the entire room. So if you have a big piece of selenite and you place it there, or I have clients who actually place selenite in every single room, regardless of what room it is, in the bathroom, wherever it is, they will place pieces of selenite everywhere. And it's to help lift the energy, it's to help clear any stuck energy, stagnant energy, or any energy that kind of walked in with your friends and neighbors sort of thing. It's just kind of like, it's almost like an eraser, I guess.
Wow, that's fascinating. So why is it that some stones will absorb energy and some will just reflect it? Can you talk about that?
I'm not sure if there's a reason like why some they just do. I think it's similar to I don't know. I mean, I never actually asked that question of why some absorb and when some deflect. It's just their
Properties.
natural properties.
That makes sense. So some stones need to be cleansed, some don't. Can you talk about that whole cleansing process though? As soon as you would, purchase a crystal, shouldn't you kind of go through that sort of a process, or what do you think?
Yes. So if you purchase a new crystals, or even it does not matter if it's new or not. If you purchase a crystals online in a shop, or even if you got it from a friend, okay? Because when we start using a crystal, our energy kind of mesh with it. So if you got it from a friend, it's even doubly important because you don't want to take on your friend's energy in a sense. So it's very important to cleanse the stone. Also, if you just purchase the crystal from a store, well, it's new. I mean, why do I need to cleanse it, right? But the thing is, it visualizes, like, different people have touched the stone, different people have held on to it. Maybe they were having a very crappy day and they were holding on to the stone, and then they put it back, and then you were the next person who decided to pick it up. Even crystals that are that you purchased online, because you don't know where that stone has been. Maybe it was in a storage unit for 2 months. So you never know where it's coming from. So it's always good as a habit to cleanse and charge all stones. Now, cleansing is very, very important. Charging is too, but it's less so. So there are different ways of cleansing. My favorite and the easiest way, I think, for everybody to cleanse a stone is just to place it out in your yard or on a windowsill where it has direct access to sunlight. So leave it there for a couple of hours, forget about it, go back, and then put it back wherever you normally store your crystals. It's also good to charge stones as well. Now, charging a stone basically means that you're putting life back into a stone. You're giving it more, it's almost like you're re-energizing a battery in a sense. So you're putting energy back inside the stone. And the best and easiest way to actually charge a stone is to use a full moon. So you just place the stone where there is hopefully access to the moonlight. But even if it's a cloudy day outside, you can still place it outside because it's still going to hold the energy of the moon. I do recommend using the full moon. So the full moon, the day of the full moon, plus or minus 1 day. So there's three nights where you could actually just place a stone outside for it to charge.
Oh, wow. Does it need to be in a protected area, or just as long as it's connected to nature, it's okay?
As long as it's connected to nature, it's totally fine. I mean, for some people who live in an apartment building where they can't actually place it outside, then placing it as close to it, maybe on your windowsill, is fine.
That's awesome. Well, I really enjoyed learning more about crystals. As I said, I've seen them work in my life, but I didn't necessarily understand or know the intricacies behind it, or, the to be able to talk to someone who really specializes in this topic is really, really awesome. So thank you so much, Susan, for
Thank you.
joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So tell everyone, now that they're so fascinated by this, and I'm sure everyone's motivated now to change their lives, where can they find you?
So there are two different ways of finding me or learning more about crystals. The easiest way to find me is actually if you have Facebook. I have a group called Crystals for Your Health where you can join, and then you can just post questions. It's a free group where you learn about how to use crystals on an everyday basis. It could be for physical, emotional, or mental. I also have a crystal, like a video library where you can access videos on different crystal topics, including how to cleanse and charge your stones. So in that video, I actually list 5 different ways of cleansing your stones and 5 different ways of charging your stone. So if the sunlight and the moonlight method do not work, then you could use one of the other ones in there. So for that, you just go on courses.susanm2, that's my name, .com. And then you'll see on the very first, the first thing that you see will be a link to join or to be able to access the crystal video library for free.
Fantastic. I love it. Well, thank you again so much, Susan. And I'll invite everyone to definitely join Susan's community for even more education around crystals. And for now, I will send you off for the day, and be sure to join me tomorrow for our next expert discussion. And I look forward to seeing you then.